Hey guys, this is Jason from Nerd News, being brought to you this week by Cloud9 Comics and more. If you're looking to get rid of some comics, maybe your mom whose kids have gone off to college and it's time to sell all those comics that are cluttering up that attic or basement. Call Paul and the guys over at Cloud9 Comics. They'll definitely take care of you. They give you a better offer on your stuff than any other place in town. Paul's a great guy. He'll come to you. He's not even going to ask you to bring your stuff out to him. If you need to get a hold of him, you can hit him up on the phone at 314-691-2864. Or you can always get in touch with him via email at cloud9comicsandmore@gmail.com. That's Cloud9 Comics.
Thank you for tuning in to Entertain the Geeky, your source for nerd news.
What's up, guys? Welcome to Nerd News. This is Jason with you as always. So we've had some pretty interesting developments this week in the news. I guess I'd like to start off by talking about Star Wars Episode 9. I know it seems a little early in the process to be talking about the ninth installment of Star Wars when we haven't even gotten to the eighth installment yet. We've got until 2020 before we're going to see that movie in theaters. But earlier this week, Lucasfilm announced that they have gotten rid of Episode 9 director Colin Trevorrow. And if that name sounds familiar to you, he's the guy who brought Jurassic World to the big screen, which grossed a lot of money and became a huge blockbuster, which ultimately is probably what caught the attention of Disney and Lucasfilm. So they brought him on back when they made their initial announcement with J.J. Abrams for 7 and Rian Johnson for 8 and Colin Trevorrow for 9. But recently they've had, I guess, some conflicts. Trevorrow had a movie, of the Book of Henry, come out recently, and me personally, I have not seen it, but apparently it didn't do too well, and there are several sites that are claiming that was why he was let go. Um, but I'm not really sure. I mean, we heard earlier this year that directors were changing. The director was changing for the upcoming Han Solo movie that will be coming out next year. So I think Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy and the folks working for her and Disney, they have a unique direction that they're trying to take this story in, and and even these side stories. And I think if you don't mesh with that, well, they're going to find somebody who will. Now we haven't heard any announcements about who they will be replacing Trevorrow with, but even money's on Rian Johnson if Episode 8 does as well as we can expect it to do. We've only seen the one trailer so far, but it's very impressive, and I really just can't wait to see what they're doing with the film. There's been speculation that we're going to move in a different direction, that it's going to be a departure from what we've seen before, and that yes, it will be sad and somber and kind of a hard time for our heroes. That doesn't mean that it will parallel Empire Strikes Back in the same way that Force Awakens paralleled A New Hope. So hopefully we'll see something different, a new vision for these films, and maybe take our characters in some directions that even we as diehard fans may not be expecting them to. So I'd put even money on the fact that if Rian Johnson's movie does well, they might ask him to come back and do Episode 9, especially when you consider that all the news that's coming out of the shoot and the production that went on for Episode 9, I mean, they are, heavily into post-production at this point. All the news that we were hearing was definitely painting a positive picture of what Rian Johnson brought to the table when it came to working with the actors and with the studio. The studio has definitely said that he's one of the best directors that they've worked with. So, I mean, they're definitely kind of in his camp right now, and if his movie is successful, it wouldn't be much of a stretch to ask him to come back and direct the film that will immediately follow the story that he's kind of set in motion with this next film. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. If they ultimately will replace him with Rian Johnson or if they'll replace him with somebody entirely new. Time will tell. But so goodbye to Colin Trevorrow and hello to a mysterious future for Episode 9. So there's some interesting things too coming out of the video game world. We're starting to get more and more news about the upcoming sequel to South Park: The Stick of Truth, which will be entitled South Park: The Fractured But Whole. And if that got a chuckle out of you, awesome, because it always does me. But so we've gotten some gameplay footage and some various different different things, powers and different things you'll be able to do within the combat system. But earlier this week, an interesting story broke on the internet. Leave it to the creators of South Park to always, hold the mirror up to our society and commentate on the lives that we lead, however materialistic or pure or whole or selfish that they are. Um, they are definitely the ones that will show us who we really are. And so, not to be left out in any way, they are bringing an interesting element to the new video game in which you can change the race, the gender, and the gender encompasses male, female, trans. So there's different all the genders being represented, and you can change your ethnicity. And apparently, when you go beyond just the normal white kid in South Park, the game gets harder. And again, it's Trey Parker and Matt Stone giving us a social commentary on how hard it is for non-white minority people to get ahead in this world. um, I personally think it's all a bunch of crap, and we're all just people. We all got to live here on this planet. We all got to do the things that we got to do in the pursuit of our happiness. But unfortunately, the recent things that we've been seeing with the political world have just shown us a different side of the country. And again, far be it for Trey Parker to be left out of that debate. So he's throwing his idea about white privilege into his new video game. So there's definitely something to look forward to this October. If it is anything like the South Park Stick of Truth video game, it will definitely bring what is great about South Park as a television show to the video game world. So we'll definitely keep our eyes out for that one this October. It is in a sense a sequel to the Stick of Truth insofar as it is taking place after that video game, but it's taking on a whole new theming where Stick of Truth kind of did a wizards and warlocks and warriors kind of Dungeons and Dragons style theming. It seems as if the Fractured But Whole is going to do a kind of superhero theme, which if you've watched South Park and you've seen these episodes, there are many episodes where the kids are dressed up in their fancy superhero costumes and they go to little meetings in Cartman's basement and they have their fights and things. So as the new kid in South Park, you will be able to kind of pick your own superhero persona and kind of flesh it out based on your own power set and obviously whatever gender and racial decisions that you will make as well. But it seems like it's going to be an interesting romp through the kind of big superhero thing that's going on in our culture right now with Marvel and DC and the various television and movie properties that are really bringing a lot of these heroes to life. Again, we'll get more of Trey Parker's commentary on these kinds of things in our society through this video game. So that should definitely be something to look forward to. Some other things. Rick and Morty is about halfway through its third season, and if you're unfamiliar with Rick and Morty, well, you should get familiar with Rick and Morty because it's very funny, very interesting science fiction show that kind of challenges our preconceived stereotypes of science fiction and time travel and multidimensional travel and alternate realities. It's just a beautifully well-written show from Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon. Two very funny guys who also are responsible to bringing Community to the screen. And it's another one, if you've not seen it, well, you should check it out. It's a pretty funny show. Excuse me. But as we get closer to wrapping up this third season. Something that I've started to notice within the structure of these episodes is it definitely feels like every episode of this new season has been a kind of a commentary, a study in character through these kind of cartoon people that we've come to know. Um, so you obviously have the opening episode of season three, and we're going to get into a little bit of spoilers. So if you haven't seen Rick and Morty season three, go check it out, and then come back here and we'll talk about it. For those of you that are still with me, though, the opening episode kind of sets up Rick as the de facto patriarch of the family because he kind of puts so much strain on Beth and Jerry's marriage that that ultimately Beth makes a choice to divorce Jerry. So Rick thinks that this is exactly what he wants, that getting Jerry out of his hair will allow him to basically do what he wants to do without any naysaying from the family. And very quickly going into the second episode, entitled Rick Mansing the Stone, um, they Rick gets to see that this decision that he's made, he thought would make his life easier, and it's just making his life a lot harder because of the strain that the divorce is putting on the children and Beth as a character. So that's this episode two is kind of our first character study. It's kind of a look into Rick and living with the consequences of the decisions that he's made. And then we go into the third episode, which is the Pickle Rick episode, where he turns himself into a pickle and ends up making kind of a pseudo suit, bodysuit, muscle tissue out of rat parts and a rat brain, and he ends up fighting his way through some terrible, terrible circumstances to get back to Beth, who has taken the children and went to therapy. And this episode is definitely Beth's character study, because while Beth is Beth is not ready to admit to herself that any of what has happened to her marriage or what is happening to her family is actually her fault. But what she finds out through talking to the therapist is that definitely she is just as culpable in the failure of her relationship, and she's a lot like Rick. She's in denial about what her life is or what meaning she has. So there's definitely an interesting kind of cross section of her and Rick's relationship. The fact that she's very much, just like Rick, just as arrogant, just as dismissive, and that, she may be the one who's destroying her children and her family and her life. So, and then of course, by the end of the episode, she just buries all those feelings deep down, just like she always does, and just like Rick does, proving that some people just can't change. But you get the gist. They definitely have been trying to show us through these episodes a look into a kind of a window into these characters' minds. And the most recent one, Rest and Rick Laxation is what it was called, was just amazing. Rick and Morty go to a health spa and they get toxins. The toxins flushed out of their brain, so it's a cognitive detox. And it turns out these toxins are personified in the parts of Rick and Morty that they don't like about themselves. So with Rick, it is his arrogance, his anger, his love, irrational love of his grandchildren and Morty. And then with Morty, it is his insecurity, his anxiety, all the parts of himself that he just wishes he could flush down the toilet. And then we get to see who Rick and Morty become without this part of themselves, while this part of themselves tries to figure out a way to get out of the situation that they're in. So what we see out of Rick is, I wouldn't say he's cold, but he is definitely kind of more monotone. And while Rick is usually the kind of character that is prone to fly off the handle and get wildly emotional about certain situations, we see kind of a more docile Rick, I guess would be the best way to describe it. So it's a very interesting kind of change. And then in Morty, We see a Morty who is confident, a Morty who is almost too good, and his moral compass is just not pointing in the right direction anymore. He takes Jessica, who is the girl that he's had a crush on since we started this whole journey with season one of Rick and Morty, and it turns out that they have nothing in common, and he's bored with her. He finds him another girl, and ultimately, obviously, they have to merge. They have to, let these dark parts of themselves come back to them because Rick realizes that if he would have known that's what the machine did, he would never have done it in the first place. So when they finally do merge, he's about to merge Morty with his dark self again, and the good side of Morty just runs away. And he takes off and he goes, what I can only assume is a big city, Chicago or New York. I don't think it's ever really stated. Um, but he becomes kind of a buyer and trader, like a stockbroker. And he finds that he's actually very good at this job because the part of him that was good, the conscience of Morty, is gone. So taking people for all their money, the hostile takeovers, these kinds of things, they're not things that are outside of his purview anymore. He definitely has allowed himself to be free of the constraints of his conscience. And ultimately, this is why I think that this episode was a great character study in Morty and who he is, because ultimately he lets himself be rejoined with his dark parts. And there is some speculation when you're watching the episode about whether or not that's actually happened. I've actually had some conversations where I've heard people say that, oh no, he did it on accident. He didn't mean to give away his location to Rick. When you watch the episode, I think there's definitely some subtle implication that he wanted to be found. That maybe a part of him still cared for Rick, and he's realizing that he thought this was what he wanted out of his life, but this is not actually what he wanted. And I think that's what we're seeing as kind of a theming throughout this season. Everybody thinks that what is happening to the Smith family is a good thing. This is what they wanted. This is going to help them, and it turns out it's just not the case at all. So it's definitely been a very interesting journey for the characters, and if you've not checked out season 3 of Rick and Morty, I highly recommend it. We're about halfway through. I think we've got about 5 or 6 more episodes to go at this point. So I'll definitely be tuning in on Sunday, and I hope you do as well. Some other interesting news before we finish up here. It was announced this week that Drew Goddard, and if you're unfamiliar with Drew Goddard, he directed the first season, showran the first season of Marvel's Daredevil. And I've talked to many people, and in many fans' opinions, that is the epitome. Some of the best stuff that they've done. Season 1 of Daredevil and season 1 of Jessica Jones are consistently the two shows that I hear people praise the most. So Drew Goddard has been tapped to write and direct X-Force from 20th Century Fox. And what we're seeing out of 20th Century Fox is kind of interesting. They're getting very ambitious with the projects that they are announcing. They're announcing projects very far out. They're doing work on New Mutants and these kinds of things. Deadpool 2, which should be with, New Mutants and Deadpool 2 should be out in theaters sometime next year. And in Deadpool 2, they're introducing us to two characters, Cable and Domino. So naturally, the spin-off to do, if you're a fan and you know who these characters are, is X-Force. And that's exactly what they're going to do. So they've hired Drew Goddard to write and direct the spin-off movie, which will star, Ryan Reynolds and Josh Brolin and the woman who is playing Domino. I don't have her name right in front of me, and I'm forgetting her name. I apologize. And rumor has it that we'll see characters from the original X-Force team, like Shatterstar and Feral, and some of these other characters. So that should be very interesting a very interesting thing to get into. I'm very excited to see the possibilities and what Drew Goddard will bring to the table. And I really hope that what Deadpool 2 shows us is kind of a setup for this, that we will get a a Cable, who is the time traveler who's come back in time to protect the future from some terrible event. And that's why ultimately he will have to form a team and work to make the future better. I really just hope that's what we get, and I'm very excited to see what Drew Goddard, who just showran Daredevil to great success back when it originally came out for Netflix. I'm really just excited to see what he'll bring to the table. I'm also interested to see if they will cast the wide net and make us a PG-13 X Force movie, or if they will go the route of Hollywood as of late with R-rated superhero movies and show us a darker kind of more visceral take on the source material. So we'll see. But yeah, that was the weekend news. I mean, there was much more than that. I urge you to check out some websites and look up for some stories and keep your eyes open for some new stuff that's going on. We got Thor Ragnarok tickets went on sale. We got that coming in November. We got Justice League in November. Hopefully with a little better direction under Joss Whedon's helm. With Joss Whedon at the helm. So yeah, check out the websites. Don't forget to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/entertainthegeeky. You can find us on Twitter at entertaingeeky. You can also find us on YouTube and Instagram at entertainthegeeky. So that's going to do it for me. You guys keep up with all your stuff. Enjoy your comics and your movies and your video games. And I will talk with you guys next week. Until then, stay geeky.